holding its breath. The sound of rain softly touched the palace windows while guards stood motionless in their posts, their eyes lowered, their hearts uneasy. Inside her private chamber, the queen sat quietly in her armchair, a single dim light illuminating the room filled with portraits, memories, and the weight of a lifetime spent between duty and secrecy. Her crown rested on a nearby table, but her gaze wasn't on it. It was distant, thoughtful, almost searching. For days, she had refused visitors. The noise of politics, ceremonies, and cameras meant nothing to her now. What mattered was something far deeper, a truth she had carried for years, buried beneath her royal composure. She asked her attendants to leave, her voice frail yet commanding, and then she told them to send in her son, King Charles. When he entered, she looked at him not as a monarch to her heir, but as a mother to her child, her eyes soft yet intense, filled with something unspoken. "Charles," she said quietly, "there's something I need to tell you, something I've never told the world." The room seemed to grow smaller as he moved closer. The ticking of the old clock became louder, echoing like a heartbeat in the silence. He knelt beside her, unsure what to expect. For a moment, she said nothing, her lips trembling as if she was gathering the strength to release what she had hidden for decades. The queen had always been a symbol of poise, of tradition, of unshakable grace under pressure. But tonight, she was different, human, vulnerable, reflective. Her eyes drifted toward the window where the moonlight fell across the golden curtains, and in that glow, memories came flooding back. She spoke slowly, recalling her travels to lands far from England's cold skies, places where the sun rose over domes and minarets, where she was greeted not by soldiers but by children with open hands, where the sound of the adhan filled the air and silence followed in reverence. She remembered her first state visit to the Middle East, how the call to prayer at dawn had touched something deep within her. "It was unlike anything I had ever felt," she whispered. "There was peace in those voices, Charles, a kind of peace the world doesn't understand." He listened, confused yet captivated, unsure where his mother's words were leading. She told him about the time she had met Muslim leaders, humble men who spoke of God not with pride but with tears in their eyes. She remembered the way people prayed shoulder to shoulder, kings beside servants, rich beside poor, equal before the same Creator. It moved her, she said, because it reminded her of something she thought the modern world had lost, the simplicity of faith. She confessed that over the years she began reading more, quietly, away from the public eye. Diplomatic gifts had included books of the Quran, and though she never spoke of it, she would spend nights turning its pages, marking verses that spoke of mercy, patience, and justice. "I found beauty where I was told not to look," she said softly. Charles's heart pounded. The weight of her words filled the room like a sacred echo. "Mother, are you saying he began, but she raised her hand gently to stop him. "No, Charles, I am saying I found truth that belongs to everyone, not just one people." Her eyes glistened as she continued. She spoke of how the media often twisted perceptions, how the world painted Islam as foreign, distant, even dangerous, but she saw something entirely different: families bound by faith, compassion for the poor, devotion to prayer. She saw strength in surrender, not weakness. She felt light in discipline, not oppression. And though she was a queen of one faith, her heart had opened to understanding another. "I met souls of faith who reminded me of Christ's earliest followers," she whispered. "They live simply, love deeply, and never forget their Lord. It humbled me." Her voice cracked slightly, but she smiled through it. "I saw reflections of God's grace where the world saw difference." The rain grew heavier outside, the rhythm sinking with the quiet tremor in her tone. Charles sat frozen, realizing this was more than a confession. It was an awakening. "I've carried this for years," she said, "because I knew the world wasn't ready to hear it from me. But you must know. You'll understand." Her hand trembled as she reached for a small object beside her chair, a small book wrapped in velvet. She handed it to him. It was a copy of the Quran, old, worn, with markings in its margins. He opened it carefully, seeing her handwriting beside certain verses, translations of peace, justice, and divine mercy. "It gave me calm," she said, her eyes glistening with tears that refused to fall. "Every time I opened it, I felt the presence of something higher than crowns or nations, something that connected every heart that truly seeks God." Charles couldn't speak. His throat tightened. For all his life, he had seen his mother as the emblem of tradition, but tonight she was a seeker of truth, stripped of title, standing before eternity. "Charles," she said finally, "the world fears what it doesn't understand, but I found peace in what they feared." Her words hung in the air, sacred, unmovable. For a long moment, neither spoke. spoke. The only sound was the wind whispering against the palace windows like the faint echo of a prayer carried across time. And then, with a calmness that seemed almost divine, she leaned back, her eyes fixed not on the walls of her chamber but on something beyond them, something unseen yet deeply known. "There's something I've never told the world," she whispered again, her voice barely audible now. Charles leaned closer, desperate to hear. Her final breath was slow, peaceful, as if carried on the wings of her own words. In that silence, the queen who ruled a kingdom left behind a mystery greater than her throne. As the sound of the rain faded into silence, King Charles sat frozen beside his mother's chair, still holding the Quran she had given him. The pages fluttered slightly in the soft wind coming through the half-open window, and for a moment it felt as if time itself had stopped. The world outside continued its rhythm, the guards shifting, the palace lights glowing, but inside that quiet room, something sacred lingered in the air. He could still hear her voice echoing in his mind. "The world fears what it doesn't understand, but I found peace in what they feared." Those words struck him deeper than any royal decree, deeper than any ceremony he had ever stood through. They carried a weight beyond politics, beyond faith labels. It was the sound of a heart that had seen truth and dared to speak it. That night, Charles didn't sleep. He stayed by her side, the Quran resting in his lap, the clock ticking endlessly, marking not time, but transformation. When dawn broke, the first light of day touched the golden frame of her portrait, and something inside him shifted. He opened the Quran again and began to read the verses she had underlined. Indeed, in the remembrance of Allah, hearts find peace. He read it slowly, his eyes pausing on each word as if hearing his mother's voice guiding him through them. He remembered the stories she had told him long before, her visits to mosques, her fascination with the discipline and serenity of the Muslim world. It wasn't random curiosity. It was a lifelong search for something she couldn't find in the noise of royal life. He recalled her trips to Malaysia, the UAE, and Pakistan, how she returned quieter, reflective, often staring out the palace window at dusk. Back then, he thought it was fatigue, but now he knew it was reflection. She'd seen something in those lands that the rest of the world didn't want to see. The sound of the adhan had touched her in a way hymns once did in her youth. The unity of Muslims bowing in prayer had reminded her of early Christianity before power, politics, and pride diluted its message. She once told him privately, "Charles, do you know what true faith looks like? It's not luxury or ceremony, it's humility before the Creator." At the time, he didn't understand, but now as he sat in her empty chamber, he began to see it clearly. She wasn't turning away from her faith, she was rediscovering the essence of it, and Islam had shown her that mirror. The queen who ruled over nations found her peace not in crowns, but in verses. He remembered her describing the moment she first heard the adhan in Cairo, how it began as a distant sound, but soon filled the air with something indescribable, like the whole world pausing to remember its creator. She said, "It felt as if every soul, every heart turned towards the same source at once. There was no division, only devotion." That image haunted him now because he could feel it too. The unity, the surrender, the peace. She had told him once that when she visited a mosque quietly one morning under diplomatic discretion, she felt something shift within her. The calmness, the simplicity, no statues, no gold, just space, light, and silence. A reminder that God doesn't need decoration, He needs sincerity. That was the moment, she said, when her curiosity became conviction. She began studying quietly, learning from scholars and translators who visited the palace for diplomatic reasons. She never spoke publicly, but her private journals revealed pages of notes about the Quran, about the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, about faith and submission. She wrote, "The purity of this message reminds me of what Christ taught before kingdoms claimed his name." Now, Charles read those words with trembling hands, realizing the magnitude of what she had discovered. His mother, the symbol of the Church of England, had seen through centuries of misunderstanding and found beauty in what the world had distorted. She saw not division but connection, not rivalry but reflection. She saw that Islam and Christianity shared more than history. They shared spirit. He imagined her standing on the balcony of her palace after her return from Saudi Arabia, gazing at the stars, whispering prayers that crossed boundaries of creed. "They worship God with such sincerity," she once said, "and it reminded me that all creation bows to the same truth." The memory stung him now, not with sadness, but awe. For decades, she had carried that flame silently, afraid of how the world would react, knowing that her every word was political ammunition. But in her final moments, she chose truth over silence. Her revelation wasn't rebellion, it was redemption. It wasn't conversion, it was connection. She told him that faith is not owned by one nation or one church. It's the language of the soul. "When I heard the adhan," she said, "it wasn't foreign. It felt like home." And now those words echoed in Charles's mind like a heartbeat. He finally understood why she spent her final years in quiet reflection, why she distanced herself from the noise of public life. She wasn't withdrawing, she was preparing to meet the one she had come to know through her own heart's journey. She told him that when she read the Quranic verse, "There is no compulsion in religion," she felt liberated. "That's what people don't understand," she said. "Islam doesn't force belief, it invites understanding." That realization stayed with him. He looked at the Quran again, tracing her notes in the margins, words she had underlined: mercy, patience, truth, unity. These weren't just religious terms, they were the essence of the humanity she had seen in the faith she once misunderstood. "Charles," she told him, "if you ever wish to lead truly, lead with understanding, not fear." The candle beside her bed had nearly burned out that night, its last flame flickering like her voice, but the light it left behind illuminated him now more than ever. He thought of how the media would never know this truth, how her private awakening would remain hidden behind royal secrecy. But deep down, he also knew that truth doesn't stay buried. It finds its way through hearts, through words, through whispers that outlive power. He remembered her final smile, peaceful, relieved, as if she had finally shared the one secret that mattered. The queen who ruled an empire had discovered the empire of faith, vast and borderless. And as she closed her eyes, she left her son not just a throne, but a mirror, to see faith not as division, but as connection, not as difference, but as destiny. The last thing she said still echoed in his mind like a sacred vow: "Charles, peace is where you stop searching and start surrendering." And in that moment, for the first time in his life, he understood that his mother's final words weren't just for him, they were for the world. The palace was quiet after her passing, but the silence wasn't empty. It was heavy, sacred, filled with echoes of words that would never fade. King Charles sat alone in her private study, the same room that once hosted world leaders, now lit only by the morning sun filtering through lace curtains. On her desk lay the Quran she had kept close in her final days, its pages marked with notes in her delicate handwriting, verses circled in soft pencil, reflections written in the margins. There was a faint scent of her perfume in the air, and beside the holy book lay a small folded letter addressed in her handwriting for Charles. His hands trembled as he opened it, and the words inside seemed to reach out from beyond time itself. "My son, truth is not inherited, it's discovered. Lead not as a king who commands, but as a man who understands." The simplicity of that message pierced him deeper than any crown ever could. It was in that moment he realized that his mother's final gift wasn't royal wisdom, it was divine perspective. For years, she had carried the burden of image, tradition, and duty, yet in her final breaths, she let all of it go to embrace something pure, something human, something eternal. He began to understand that faith, the real faith she spoke of, isn't about symbols or institutions, it's about peace. The peace she found in the call to prayer, the peace she described when she said she felt the nearness of God, not in grand cathedrals, but in the silent humility of prostration. That peace was now calling him too, quietly but persistently. As the hours passed, he looked at the Quran again, noticing a page she had marked with a golden ribbon. It was from Surah Al-Baqarah.
"There is no compulsion in religion. Truth stands clear from error."
He read it aloud slowly, and for the first time, it felt as if those words weren't meant just for believers, they were meant for humanity. His eyes welled up, not with sorrow, but with a kind of awakening. The Queen's legacy wasn't just political, it was spiritual. She had shown him, without ever announcing it to the world, that understanding another faith doesn't diminish your own, it deepens it, it removes the walls of ignorance, and lets light through. He realized then that perhaps her final words about Islam weren't meant to start debates or headlines, they were meant to plant a seed of unity, of humility, of awareness that truth doesn't wear a crown or carry a flag. It simply is, and that's what she had found. As he stood up, he walked to the window and looked out at the palace gardens where the wind moved through the trees in gentle waves. He could almost hear her voice again, soft but steady. "Charles, peace is not given to nations, it's found in hearts." He turned and saw one last thing, her diary left open on the last page she ever wrote in. The entry was short, dated 2 days before her passing. "I am at peace. The world may not understand, but God does." He closed his eyes and felt tears slip down his face. For the first time in his life, the man who was king felt small, and in that smallness, he felt closer to truth than ever before. The noise of the world, the politics, the titles, the press, all of it faded into insignificance. All that remained was her message. He realized that her fascination with Islam wasn't about changing who she was, it was about discovering what humanity truly is. The humility of prayer, the equality of believers, the discipline of faith, these were not foreign to her, they were familiar to the soul. She had seen in Islam the same light that once guided prophets across ages, the same call to worship one God, to serve creation, to live with justice and compassion. She had once told him, "Charles, power fades, but goodness endures. Now he understood that she wasn't talking about reigns or kingdoms. She was talking about faith. He walked back to her bedside and placed the Quran gently on her pillow, whispering, "You found peace, Mother, and I will carry your message." As he turned to leave, the camera of memory replayed the last moments of her life, the way her eyes softened when she said the word peace, the calm in her breathing when she mentioned God, the way her voice trembled with emotion when she whispered, "There's something I've never told the world." Now he knew what she meant. She had found a truth too beautiful to keep hidden, a connection between faiths too deep to be silenced. And though the world would never know the full story, he would, and perhaps that was enough. Outside, the bells of London began to toll, announcing the Queen's passing to the nation. The world mourned a monarch, but Charles mourned a mother, a seeker, a believer in something greater than herself. He stood there quietly, watching the flags lower at half-mast, and whispered under his breath, "May the peace you found find us all." That night, he lit a candle beside her photograph, the Quran resting beneath it, and as the flame danced, he remembered her final lesson, that true greatness isn't about being served, it's about serving truth. The Queen who had ruled an empire had, in her final hours, bowed before the eternal King, and that realization would haunt and guide him for the rest of his life. In the years to come, whenever Charles spoke of faith, of unity, of peace among nations, people would hear traces of her in his voice. They would hear the echo of a mother's revelation carried by her son, a message not bound by religion but elevated by understanding. Because she didn't leave behind a hidden faith, she left behind an open heart.